We're at a place in this country where athletes obviously have a very powerful platform, more so than in the past, because of social media, just because of the way things are. But when you put yourself out there, you risk a lot. And for both of you, with where we are right now in terms of activism in this country and athletics, how risky is it for people who want to say something to actually say something because of what they have to possibly lose?
Yeah, check. Can you hear me? Okay, we're gonna keep going anyway. I think for this generation, different than mine, with the social media platform, they're having the opportunity to grow their brand. But oftentimes, guys react emotionally out of impulse without stopping to think what repercussions come from my tweet, my post, my Instagram, my Snapchat. And oftentimes, because they don't understand the magnitude of posting where they have that opinion to post how they feel, sometimes it's better to get an adult or someone older or second opinion, someone that you trust, before you post it. There you go. Someone a little bit more experienced before you post. So part of my job as a player engagement director for the Jags, oftentimes guys come to me and say, MP, what do you think about this post? And to me, those are the best case scenarios because of my experience. I can say, you may want to clean that one up or don't post that one at all. And so I understand the climate in which we're in. They want to voice their opinion. But as a professional athlete, in my case, sometimes it's better not to post.
Well, I have a little bit of a different opinion. I wrote a project, a book called We Matter, Athletes and Activism, and I was able to interview a lot of athletes who were doing just that, voicing their opinions, and I love it. You know what I mean? It's like a throwback to the 60s. You know, the times of where you had, Bill Russell and John Carlos and Tommy Smith and, Dr. Harry Edwards. Right. So, but now you have LeBron James and, Carmelo Anthony and Dwayne Wade and all, Eric Reid and Kaepernick, and everybody is giving their opinions and weighing in on topics, and there's so much power in it. Especially when you talk about social media. If you look at LeBron, he has just as many followers as Trump. You know what I mean? So when he says something, everybody hears it. It's like, imagine if Muhammad Ali back in the day had a Twitter account. Like, that would be amazing, you know what I mean? And there's so much power in that. So I love this resurgence of athletes who have found their voice and are able to make change. And it's being led by the people at the top, like LeBron James. So I think it's great. And really what I want to do is really encourage younger athletes to really start using their voices and finding their voices. And of course, you have to do your research and make sure that you know exactly what you're talking about. But there's so much power in the athlete voice, and it's a beautiful time right now.
But we also know that the thing we often hear now is stay in your lane, okay? Either stay in your lane or stick to sports. And when we hear that, oftentimes it's really directed at African-American athletes. And I say that because, for example, J.J. Watt, who did a ton of incredible work around hurricane relief in Texas. And when he did that, he was lauded on social media. People talked about how great it was that he was out there, championing this cause and raising money for all these people who had lost their homes and lost all their possessions. No one was talking about, at that point, stay in your lane. So do we find that this is really a uniquely African-American thing in terms of the criticism about speaking out and using your platform?
Go ahead.
Well, I think that it's more than that. I think it's really that when people agree with you, then they applaud you. Oh, look at this athlete who is speaking out. This is wonderful. Let's put him on our program. But then when they disagree with you, like Laura Ingraham, then it's like, okay, you need to shut up and dribble. And it's funny, but when you see this recent situation that happened with the NBA in China, and you saw that the players and LeBron and everybody elected not to speak out because they didn't like the position that somebody else put them in. Not a position that they chose to be in, but someone else, talking about Daryl Morey's tweets. And they elected not to speak out. And then the same people who told athletes to stay in their place, to shut up and dribble, to keep politics out of sports, were now saying, well, why aren't these athletes using their platforms to speak on an issue? But it's because of an issue that they agree with. And that's where the hypocrisy comes in. Either you can't have it both ways. Either you're going to be for athletes using their voice, or you're not.
And to me, I'd agree. It's the hypocrisy that comes along with speaking your voice. And to me, that was what I tried to iterate earlier, is sometimes we have to be careful in how we present our platform. without being educated and not understanding exactly how the repercussions of your tweet or your statement would affect other people. Oftentimes, you put yourself, especially if you have kids. If you tweet something out there, now your kids may get in a situation, they get slandered in elementary school, all because of a tweet. I'm all about people having their voice, but I think it should be managed in a way that is productive and positive.
One of the things about professional athletes is they have a lot of opportunities. And marketing comes into it. You can get endorsement deals, be it with athletic apparel companies or soft drinks or whatever marketing we're talking about in terms of someone saying, hey, I want to partner with you to sell my brand. But when you do that, there are certain things that come along with that, like don't hurt my brand. If I'm going to give you X amount of dollars to help me push my brand, don't do things that hurt my brand. And where do you guys come down on the ability of companies that athletes partner with to really direct and lead what they do on social media?
That is a really tough question because to me, from a perspective from the company, they have a brand to protect, like the NFL Shield, if you will. And if you have a person that's doing things in the community or in the public eye that could be deemed as not positive or not becoming of an athlete or not becoming of that brand, it can be a challenge for a company to rebound from that. So I think companies that choose to use athletes for a particular brand, be Sprite or Snickers or Skittles or whatever, should be careful in understanding what platform, get a chance to sit and talk to that player, understand what his needs are, what his thoughts are, what his social stance is on things that may be happening.
Know who he is.
That's exactly right. Know your personnel, as we talked in the green room earlier. Yeah. Sometimes you have to figure out who that person is before you just hand them a product and I want you to represent this. I think oftentimes companies just see an opportunity to grow their brand without stopping for a moment to understand the player and what stance he may have on a particular subject.
Well, I don't want to keep disagreeing, but I have to respectfully
But that's
disagree.
what this is.
Well, Bill Russell said once that you're not going to reduce me to a clown that's used to entertain your circus. And he said, I am a man and I have beliefs and I have opinions and you're going to respect me for my opinions. And I thought that was so powerful because, the way that athletes are going right now, they're not afraid to use their platform to voice their opinions. Example, Steph Curry is signed with Under Armour. The Under Armour president comes out and says, I want to congratulate President Trump. He's a great asset and everything like that. So Steph Curry said, well, wait a minute now. You don't speak for all of us. If we're going to do that, don't do that as representing the entire brand. Do that representing yourself. And then he backtracked. Now, he had to backtrack to where Steph Curry was the lead person for Under Armour. So he made his voice being heard of his position, and then the company followed. So what you're seeing right now is athletes using their position, their brand, to be able to direct the company, not the opposite, not the other way around.
In many cases.
In many cases, but you're seeing the top athletes do it. So when you see because the athletes who have the most to stand to lose. Where before the thought was that if you do speak out, you could hurt your brand. So then you had somebody, who would say, I'm not black, I'm OJ. Don't put me with any of that. You know what I mean? But now you're having LeBron say, no, I'm not going to go to the White House. No, I don't agree with Trump's policies. No, I don't. And he's the top athlete. So if he can say that, it's not like the brands are going away from him once he says that. So if he does that, he sets a precedent and a standard for all other athletes to follow, and then they have the courage to be able to speak out and speak on their voices without it hurting their brand.
But Marcus, I think there is a difference with the NBA and the NFL.
Totally agree.
Yeah, and I've always found it very interesting in reporting and talking about this stuff on TV. The NBA has this image of being a very progressive league. Mm-hmm. And obviously in terms of minority representation of coaches and general managers, better than the NFL. But people seem to forget that the NBA has a rule where you have to stand during the anthem. Mm-hmm. And we all know what happened the last few years with the NFL. But Marcus, do you feel that it is inherently different for NFL athletes because of the perception? I'm not getting specifically into the kneeling, I'm just saying in terms of the perception that the league is not as progressive as the NBA, that NFL athletes have to kind of navigate things a little more differently than NBA athletes do?
I think that is definitely the case. The NBA is very progressive, even in how they let them warm up with hoodies on. Well, we have in the NFL, we don't do that. You got to have your socks at a certain length. You got to wear your pants at a certain length. You can't wear your jersey out. And so we have all these limitations when players take the field about them showing a little bit of individuality, when the NFL is like, we don't do that here. So to me, I think a lot of times the NFL player get painted and trapped in this box. This is it. That's all you can do. That's all we want from you. Go out and make plays. We want to protect this shield. We want to protect this money machine that we have without you being a disruption. Even to like socks. You know, guys will get fined for not having their socks high enough. In the NBA, I don't even know if you have a sock rule.
No, there's no sock rule. and there's a stark difference in the NBA and the NFL. I had the pleasure of being able to interview NBA Commissioner Adam Silver in my book, We Matter. And I asked him that very question, what makes the NBA different? And you know, he talked about his appreciation for activism, for the history of activism. He talked about Bill Russell and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He referred to the previous All-Star weekend where he honored athletes for their activism. And you know, you don't really see that too much in the NFL from Roger Goodell. Now, this is a different NBA than the one under David Stern, because people have to remember that Mahmoud Abdul-Aruf and Craig Hodges was blackballed from the NBA under David Stern. You know, so now it comes with new management, everything is kind of different now. But the fact that Adam Silver is handling everybody and giving everybody a space to feel comfortable in speaking their voice. And I asked him specifically in my book, I said, okay, what if they speak on something that you disagree with? Because that's the caveat. Everybody can applaud somebody when they agree with them. But what if an athlete uses their platform to speak on something that you disagree with? Will you still be supportive? And he said, definitely. You know, we're a mixture of different opinions and different cultures, different ideologies and everything like that. And you just don't hear that same language from the NFLs. And also, let me just add, guaranteed contracts. That's a big difference. It's a lot easier to be vocal when you know that your contract is guaranteed. You know, in the NFL, you're kind of an employee at will. So they can come in the next day and say, you know what, you've been playing well, but we don't like your face anymore. And then you can either have to renegotiate your contract or they can cut you. The NBA doesn't have that. So that's a big difference as well.
Yeah, and you're having that job security. You do have the ability to speak out more. You have the ability to be more comfortable in the space that you want to be in. And Etan, you mentioned the fact about just how the league, in terms of being more socially active, okay, that the NBA has a better reputation for that than the NFL does. Now, the NFL would argue that what they've done around their whole social justice initiative with the Players Coalition, that they are more in that space than they used to be. But what you hear is that players who have spoken out and who have gone with the Players Coalition and sided with that group, that they get labeled as sellouts. So how do you balance that where, okay, you have these things going on and you're a player in the NFL and you want to use your platform, and a lot of these guys did by getting with the Players Coalition, but then people label them as sellouts. I mean, how do you deal with that?
It's exactly what we're talking about right now. You have to make a business decision. To me, you have to look at your personal brand, how you are financially, things that matter to you. And to me, you have to take into account all of that. And so when you have a situation where you have the social justice platform now that the league really had to get behind because of everything that was happening, it's like, okay, let's be progressive like the NBA and say, let's get in front of this. It's too late. Once the dam is burst, how do you clog it? Now you have to go way upstream now to fix it. But now at this point, with our social justice platform, it's kind of too late. Okay, what can we do now to try and solve some of the issues that we're having when our players are speaking out about it? So now let's figure out what we can do. So to me, you still have to figure out as a player, where do you stand on that? To me, you have to figure out, is this something that I'm really worth being blackballed? Is it something that I really want to put my foot out there? And if you do, be a man. Man up and say, okay, I'm all about social justice, social change, coalition. I'm all about it, but be able to stand there when those bullets start to fly. Like we talked about earlier, sometimes when those bullets start to fly, you really haven't thought through the repercussions of something that happened, especially when we talk about guaranteed contract, not having the money that you thought you had. All of that comes in, and it really matters at the end of the day.
So, I know you want to say something because you're got something. Just give me one second. What I was going to do is, we're running short on time, so I was going to see if anyone had any questions, because I know if I let you go, we're going to go overtime. Okay? So just by a quick show of hands, does anyone have any questions for these two gentlemen? Got a question over here.
I have a question for Marcus. Just how have you seen the NFL evolve, this past decade, for
To me, it's like anything else. Until you get put in a situation, you have to evolve, and I think that's where we are now in the NFL climate. I think because of some of the things that we're dealing with, the Colin Kaepernick and being blackballed and ostracized of he's been a bad guy, but you can't tell me Colin Kaepernick isn't better than some of the backup quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Come on, let's be real. And so to me, once you start to figure out that dynamic and what players are interested in, you have to start progressing in that way to figure out guys who may have this platform that want to speak out against the NFL or against social justice or inequalities. How can the NFL get behind it and back it? But until the NFL had to deal with some of these matters, they didn't have a platform to really give players a vehicle to pursue those interests. But now they're creating that, which I think is commendable and definitely headed in the right direction.
Anybody else? Because I'm going to let Etan speak here, and that's going to take all the time. So does anybody else have a question? Okay, go on.
Well, I think it's difficult to really, credit the NFL's progressiveness while they have somebody blackballed. I do. When somebody who has taken a peaceful protest, in the spirit of Dr. King, of taking his protest to the mainstream, and his grievances in a peaceful way, which is what the feedback was after all of the different uprisings in different places. It's hard to really say, okay, now they're progressive, because they are supporting the Players Coalition while they have him blackballed. I think that one of the things and it's interesting in looking at the Jay-Z and NFL deal when they were sitting there at the press conference, and one of the things that Jay-Z said was that we're past kneeling, and it's not about one person getting a job. And I have to respectfully disagree with Jay-Z as well as on that because of the fact, not of what him being blackballed represents. So it represents where it's like, okay, so if anybody else steps out of line in this fashion, they will be blackballed too. So as long as you have this person blackballed, then that's what's hanging over all of the players' heads who have non-guaranteed contracts, who are trying to get into a rhythm in their career and everything like that. So the communication, I think, from the NFL, I understand that it's a bottom line league and you don't want to do things that affect your bottom line, but if you're really going to embrace allowing your players to have the freedom to speak their mind, then you can't have somebody blackballed.
I agree and disagree with you.
Okay.
But again, like I said, at the end of the day, he made a big boy decision.
Right.
That was a decision that he made. So if he decided to step out and had a peaceful protest, when at the time there wasn't a policy in place for it, and I get that, which is key.
A lot of people don't understand. There was no policy that prohibited him from doing what he did. And look, I get, and I have this debate with people all the time, especially colleagues of mine, that we can have a discussion about how many teams he can start for, but we can't have a discussion about the fact that he's not in this league, because there are guys in this league at that position who can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Right. So I mean, that's just not a credible argument that he's not good enough to play. Now, I understand what both of you are saying, and what it really comes down to is we're never going to be able, I think, to reach a consensus on this, because on the one hand, you have the Players Coalition and the people who bought into what the NFL wanted to do there and say, okay, we can't get Cap a job, but we can do work in our communities. And then on the other hand, you have people who say, wait a minute, if Cap doesn't have a job, what does that represent overall? So I don't know if we're ever going to be able to have a meeting of the minds on this. I think everybody's going to stay dug in on their sides because Cap's not going to get a job. I mean, can we agree on that?
I agree.
Unfortunately, I do agree. And I think that's where your original question, which was, what's the difference between the NFL and the NBA right now? Yeah. Because remember, I always go back to it. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf and Craig Hodges were blackballed from the NBA. Absolutely. And they never played again.
About how long ago that been compared to how long it's been for Colin Kaepernick?
Oh, definitely.
It's just a microcosm of time for Colin based on when Mahmoud had his stance. And so to me, the NFL needs time to progress. And because they're trying to do something, in my opinion, they're taking the necessary steps. Although the NBA is dealing with things that their players have been speaking out for a long time, mm-hmm. I think because of the issues that the players are dealing with now, they're evolving. It's taking time, but I think they're making the necessary steps, in my opinion. And to me, finish with Colin Kaepernick, is it about Colin or is it about the cause? And if it's about the cause, then Colin is a sacrificial lamb for the cause. If that's the main issue, let's work on the cause. And to me, right now, the NFL is working on cause. It's not necessarily about college.
And we could continue this discussion all day long, okay? But apparently we are way over time.
Okay.
Like, seriously, I could have done this for another hour, all right? Can we get a hand for both of these gentlemen? Appreciate you, man. I think that's it.